Hello everyone, I'm your media hostess Brooke, and welcome to Media Morsels, where today's segment is titled Bookshelf Buffet, where I'm going to be doing a deep dish discussion into the world of books. And currently I have noticed that books have become more popular than I feel like they were before 2020, and maybe it's because of quarantine and COVID and everyone being isolated by themselves that caused people to pick up a book again. Maybe I was just out of touch with books back then, because really the only experience I personally had with reading was for school. We had this thing called AR points, which is accelerated reader. I don't know if this is just like a Texas thing or a small town Texas thing, but it was basically where you set an amount of points that you had to get in a week, and you had to read books and take quizzes on them to get said points. And so like I read Harry Potter back then in elementary school, so that was easy for me. But then whenever they got rid of AR points in high school, I basically stopped reading unless it was for my classes. Like I read To Kill a Mockingbird, Fahrenheit 451, 1984, Frankenstein, The Crucible. And once I graduated high school in 2020, yes, a tragic year to graduate, I had not really read a book throughout my college years. So my sophomore year of college, I had decided to actually pick up a book again because I was really into sad media for some reason. I had watched the anime Banana Fish, and I read the manga as well, which I guess that could count as reading a book, but not like, this was different. I'm talking about like books without pictures and stuff like that, just words. And so I decided to be even more sad because my friends on Twitter were talking about the book A Little Life, and I'd also seen it a little bit on TikTok and how it made everyone cry, and I said, I want to go through that too. I don't know why I said that, but I did. And so I read A Little Life, and I originally got it in November of 2022, and it took me until March of 2023, I think, to finish this. And it's a pretty hefty book. It's around 800 pages, and I'm going to talk more on this book whenever I have my interview segment at the end of this episode with my dear friend who is an avid reader unlike me. But yeah, this is the only book I have read throughout college besides like textbooks and books I've had to read for class, which none of them are like fiction books. They're just books related to what we're learning about, or like TED Talk books or something like that. This is the only one I have picked up. But the thing is, I do have a whole book collection. Here are some of them. There's obviously Little Life, the only one I've read. And then I also have Gideon the Ninth, which I have been wanting to read so bad. This was another one I had seen on Twitter. I get a lot of recommendations from my mutuals on Twitter, and I really want to read this one so bad. It's angsty, it's fiction, sci-fi, which is all stuff I love, and it also has lesbian representation, which is very important to me personally because I'm a lesbian as well. But I just haven't read it. I bought this, I think in 2022? 2023? Okay, I think I bought this at the beginning of 2023, a little bit after I finished A Little Life, and I still haven't read it. I've picked it up a lot of times and reread the first 30 pages every now and then, and I still have not finished it, and I want to so bad, but I feel like it's a lot of effort for me personally to sit down and read a book again. I don't know why. I'm so good at reading stuff on my phone, embarrassingly fan fiction, but like reading a physical book is so hard for me. Like, you can see that I've gotten through a bit of it, but I honestly forgot what happened yet again. So, and then the other book I have, just because I really liked the way that Hanya Yanagihara writes in A Little Life, I decided to also buy her book To Paradise. I just think this is a beautiful cover as well. It's also really big. This one is how many pages? 700 pages. I've heard more mixed reviews on this one than A Little Life, so we'll see how this one is, if I even get to it ever. My sister bought it for me, so thank you to my sister for buying this for me. It's hardcover. I have not read this one at all. But I have other books which are kind of just like little miscellaneous books. A lot of these, I think all of these, my sister got for me, my oldest sister. Which is, this one's not really a book. This is like a witch book, and I've looked at like the zodiac sign stuff in this, but haven't really read it. And then this was like my favorite show throughout high school. This is BuzzFeed Unsolved, which is now called Ghost Files on Watcher's YouTube channel. And I have not read this yet, but I want to, just because this show made my teen years, like through whenever they first started. I think it was 2017 to like 2020. I lived by this show, and I still love Ryan and Shane. So, and then my two other books I have in my current collection are related to like my favorite video game right now, which is Final Fantasy 14. This is Chronicles of Light, and this is, I think it's just a bunch of short stories, and it has really beautiful art in it. It has short stories related to the story of the game and stuff that's not in the game. So I really want to read this, but yet again, I have not gotten to it at all. And then this one's kind of funny because it's literally a children's book. It's also Final Fantasy 14, but you can see it's got only like a couple of words, and it's got illustrations in it. I just think it takes a certain kind of person to really get into reading again. And whenever you're not, like, I grew up a reader though, but I think maybe I got exhausted from it. Like, I read for fun in elementary and middle school, and then when I got to high school, reading kind of felt like a chore. There were a couple of books I really liked reading whenever I had to get points for school. One of the books I really liked was I'll Give You the Sun. Such a good book. I read that one freshman year of high school, which was a long time ago for me. And I really can't remember what other books. Oh, there was a book I read called Beauty Queens, which was also a really good book, but I also had to read it for an assignment for school, so I don't think I could have enjoyed it in the full capacity that I could have. But yeah, I think being forced to read throughout school, like especially books you don't really want to read, like when I had to read my assigned books that I mentioned earlier, like Fahrenheit 451 and 1984, not to say those are bad books, but whenever you're put like a time limit and then you're quizzed on them and you can't really fully digest the book in your own capabilities, it's hard to truly enjoy it. And then you kind of associate that with reading, and you're like, okay, do I really want to spend my free time reading? And that's just for me personally. I really do want to read because I also like kind of escaping to another world, especially whenever like life is so stressful, because currently I'm in 7 classes and I have a job and I don't have a lot of time for hobbies, sadly. I would love to read a book, especially like I mentioned that I love Final Fantasy 14, and I would love to read an extension of it, but it's just difficult whenever you don't have a lot of free time. But I had mentioned earlier that I had read some manga. Banana Fish was a huge part of my life from 2020 to 2022, beginning of 2023. I think to like mid 2023, I was severely obsessed with Banana Fish for some reason. And I have all the manga, which I will show later that I have some of them. And so after I watched the anime, I read all the manga, and I don't know if you can really classify those as books. They're a type of book, but they're very different from, like, let's say, like, this is very different from a manga, and mangas are typically pretty short, and there's a lot of them because there's 19 volumes of Banana Fish. And I also read a lot of manga growing up as well. So there's this one called Lucky Lucky Clover, I think, which I read in 3rd grade. And that one's about bunnies. I don't really remember what else. It's about talking bunnies, and they go to school together, they have adventures. I don't really remember, but I really liked that. So manga's a good way, I think, to kind of maybe slide back into reading, especially if you like anime, because it relates to, if you like a certain anime, like Jujutsu Kaisen is really popular right now, which I have Gojo right there. Jujutsu Kaisen's really popular, and if you want to get into reading, maybe you can start with reading manga, because you're basically reading the show. So Maybe if you want to get ahead of the episodes, you can start reading the manga there, and then maybe once you start reading manga, you can move on to books without any art and just start reading just straight up words. But I think something that I struggle with reading is I think there's this condition called aphantasia where you can't see anything when you close your eyes. Like, if I were to tell you to close your eyes and picture an apple, like, you would actually see it. But when I do that, I just see darkness. I thought that's how everyone was, but I've talked to my friends about it. They're like, yeah, I can see an apple. Like, I see it, like, it's physically there, but it's not. Or, like, someone said that they could see it, like, they could picture it without even having to close their eyes. I was like, how do you do that? Because I can't do that. But my friend Casey, who we're talking to later, she also can't see that stuff, and she's an avid reader, so I don't know. But I think a big deal with me is that whenever I get to parts in the book and it starts describing someone or describing the setting, anything along those lines, I can't picture it. Like, it's so hard to explain. Like, I have an idea of what it looks like in my head, but I can't actually see it. It's so hard to describe. But I watched a video on aphantasia a bit ago, and it really described my own experience. I don't know how many people can relate to that, or if more people can be like, yeah, I can actually see the image in my head. And if you can actually see the image in your head, I'm very jealous because I wish I could, especially as someone who deems himself as a creative person who likes making art. I wish I could see in my head, but I can't. Additionally, I feel like the rise of book talk, which is, if you don't know what that is the book lovers of TikTok, where if your For You page is full of book related things, you're technically on book talk, or if you post about books on your account, you're a book talk creator, which I'm personally not a part of book talk, but I'll get stuff on my For You page. Like, I can remember when people were reading A Little Life, they were like recording their reactions to the books. I literally recorded me reading each section that I did, and it's funny to watch me be tame to sobbing my eyes out at the end, which that's how a lot of people were on TikTok. Because if you go to a Barnes and Noble, you'll see like a book talk display, probably. That's at like almost every Barnes and Noble I go to. And this book is typically there. I feel like book talk has had a big influence on people reading again and picking up books. TikTok in general has had a huge influence on things, which I can make a whole other episode on just TikTok and its influence. But it has influences on even little things such as just books and people making accounts dedicated to books, people being inspired to write books because of book talk. And we will now be transitioning to the interview segment of this with my very beautiful and amazing friend, Casey.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Course. Okay, so before we start really talking about books, I just want to know what inspired you to really get into reading because I know back in high school you didn't read as much as you do now because I think we just read what we had to for our classes we were in.
Yeah. Well, you probably remember I read a lot when we were little, and then when I got to high school and they forced us to read, I did not read anymore outside of class. But I feel like with TikTok and everything and YouTube, like when books went viral or whatever, like everyone was reading them, that made me want to read them. And so I started reading like popular books like that, but I feel like I've kind of found what genres I like the most since then. But yeah, I feel like book talk and booktube kind of got me back into it.
Yeah, because you have the Goodreads account and also your little book Instagram too.
Yeah, I started my little book Instagram.
Yeah, I don't have that, but I do have my Goodreads account that has like my books from high school on it.
And you're friends with our teacher.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And then are there specific genres or themes you find yourself gravitating towards these days?
I'm definitely a fantasy girl. I love fantasy books and kind of sci-fi too, because I feel like the best books when I was little was like were like The Hunger Games and Harry Potter, things like that. But now I still like prefer fantasy over other genres.
Yeah.
And I love the author Sarah J. Maas. I love her books the best, probably.
I'm like, I don't think I have a favorite genre, but literally all the books I read are sad because
That's their genre. It's depressing.
Sad. A Little Life is sad.
You
Um,
can't pay me enough to read that one.
these they're manga, but all of them are sad. Banana Fish is sad.
Well, I like when there's like stuff going on that can be sad, but when it's so depressing, like a little life, that's don't sign me up for that. I don't want to
Yeah,
read it.
like I think I prefer like angst with a happy ending rather than just pure angst and a tragic ending, but my
Yeah, give me
track
a happy
record,
ending, please.
yeah, please. Okay, and so out of all the books you can remember reading, which ones are your favorite? And that can be recent or even like elementary school days.
Well, yeah, like I was saying, I love Sarah J. Maas. And so she has the ACOTAR, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and then Throne of Glass, that's my favorite one. And it's like, I think it's 8 books long. And
Jeez.
then she has a new series, Crescent City, and actually, it's the second one, Crescent City.
But okay, so on the topic of back with TikTok and Book Talk, I think I've actually heard some of these like mentioned on Book Talk, even though I'm not super into Book Talk, it just finds its way on my For You page a lot of the time. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on Book Talk in general.
Um, yeah, I feel like, well, I like it because it really gets like the word out there, I guess, on different books. But a lot of the time, like the more mainstream ones, I'm not always a fan of.
Mhm.
Like with Fourth Wing, everyone hyped it up to be like amazing. And when I read it, I liked the plot of it, but like the writing style, I did not really like. And another one, I read a book called Powerless. That one people have said was so good, and I did not like it. Which it wasn't bad, but it just felt exactly like copy and paste of the Hunger Games.
Oh, I'd hate that.
And yeah, I don't know. I just didn't really like that one. I just feel like on Book Talk, they everyone just like jumps on the same book, and it's not always, I don't know. In my opinion, sometimes they're not the
Yeah.
best books out there, but some of them are good. So I don't know.
Yeah, because you have, what is it, Song of Achilles,
Yes,
the
I
one I
actually have
gifted
that
you.
one.
That one was very
Yep.
popular, but
Brooke
that
gave
one
me
I heard
this
is
one
good.
for my birthday. And yeah, I really liked this one. So I don't know. Book Talk is like hit or miss because some of them are so good. And some of them I feel like, I don't know, everyone likes different things. So
And then I have obviously I this is like the book I could talk about forever. This book literally like it ruined my mental health. Like I was in shambles reading this, and that's why it took me so long. I like the writing in it a lot though. Like I say I hate this book, but it is like my favorite book. Um, but yeah, it ends so tragically, and I have my little bookmark that I used for it, and it probably has like tear stains on it. And it says,
I
and they
love
lived
that.
happily ever after to the end of their days, which is a Tolkien quote, uh, which that is not true. But Book Talk talked about this book so much. Like, some people are like, it's overhyped, which I guess I think it's overhyped because I think the wrong people are reading this.
Anytime I see like a recommendation for that one, they're like, or people say like it's their favorite book, but they would not recommend it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it because I think her writing is so good in this. And like, even though like it's just kind of about like people's normal lives and like tragedies and stuff, she makes it interesting. But I think when like the wrong people read it, I just think like it's either people who are too young, like I say like 15 around that age, younger read it, and then they just don't understand it, or people say it's like unrealistic, or they're just dogging on it essentially. And I don't know. I just feel like people are just so insensitive towards this and they should be more sensitive towards it. But
I
yeah,
know. I'm like curious to read it because people's opinions are so strong about it.
honestly,
But
I
I'm
think you could just like watch a YouTube video of someone talking about it. I'll have to find one where someone like isn't being awful about it. Yeah, I think you have to read it in like a really good headspace, but then you have to be prepared for that headspace to be ruined for like
I don't know.
a
I
week
don't
at
know
least.
if I can do that.
But also, Colleen Hoover, she's big on Book Talk. There's a certain line in that book I would like to bring up. This line, a fair warning, might be NSFW. Um, but the line in the
It's so
book
bad.
is, "Thank you for this baby," she says from the back seat. "He's beautiful." I laugh. "You're responsible for the beautiful part, Rachel. The only thing he got from me was his balls." She laughs. She laughs hard. "Oh my God, I know," she says. "They're so big." We both laugh at our son's big balls. I just think that is such a beautiful line for such a
It's
beautiful, popular book.
um yeah. So that's what I mean with TikTok. It's very hit or miss. Because also I feel like when you're first starting out reading, you're getting back into reading, like you have a different taste in books you like. Because I think I have like four of her books, but I don't really like romance books anyway, so I don't know
I
if
don't
it's
either.
her or if it's me. But lines like that, I'm like, I don't know if I'm a fan of her. Little silly of her.
But yeah, with romance books, I feel like I'd rather have like a main story that has romance in it rather than romance being like the focal point of the
I
book.
agree. There's like a genre, I guess, called romantasy, where I think it's like mainly fantasy with a subplot of romance, and that's my favorite.
Okay, so what are your biggest struggles with reading?
I feel like in college you don't have much time to read
No.
unless you're really good at like time management, because I find myself like not being able to relax ever because I put all my assignments on like a big spreadsheet. So just like knowing I have all of those coming stresses me out to where I can't ever relax. Like I'm always worried about that
Yeah,
or whatever. But I try to make myself read every night because I like it's something I enjoy, obviously, but it's still like hard to make myself start doing it sometimes. I don't know. And then my other struggle, I would say, is getting on my phone when I'm trying to read
mm,
because I feel like I have such a bad attention span. I'll read like a sentence and then I'll pick up my phone.
yeah,
But I'm trying to be better about that and I'm trying to like take some of my screen time and replace it with reading instead because I don't actually want to be on my phone. It's just like a boredom or like defense mechanism thing or
yeah.
something.
I think like my biggest struggle is I think I mentioned earlier how I keep getting giant books. Like I should probably stick with books that are like 200 pages, but I'm not bad with reading. I think I just like get attached to like certain like pieces of media or something and I only want to like consume things that relate to it. So like embarrassingly,
Yeah.
like I'll read every night, but it's on my phone and it's fan fiction.
But that's still reading.
It's reading.
I bet you could probably find like the popular fan fictions on Goodreads, maybe.
Probably that's like there are literally books that were fan fictions that turned into books. Like After was a Harry Styles fan fiction, and then Love Hypothesis, which
Oh,
that one used to be Kylo Ren and Rey from Star Wars.
and it looks just like them on the cover
Yep,
too.
yep.
Which our other point, we do not like when there's like cartoon people on the cover of a book. We're not gonna
No,
read it.
you're very much judging books by covers, which that's literally like a saying in life, never judge a book by its cover. But we do that very aggressively. Okay, and so what brings you the most joy in reading and how has it enriched your life?
I'm not usually a
Yay.
book tabber, but I tabbed my favorite parts of this book. This is the last book of the Throne of Glass series, and I just love the characters in it so much. I just feel like I don't know, we can learn so much from characters, even when it's like a fiction thing and it's like they're like fighting for their lives in a war and stuff. That's obviously not our daily life,
No,
but I just when you can connect to a character like that, I just love it. You like genuinely love the characters and you don't want to leave them when you finish the
yeah,
series.
yeah.
I feel like that's the best part
I
of
get
reading.
way emotionally attached to characters of any media I consume. It's
Me
like,
too. It's bad.
guess what book I'm bringing up again? If you
We
can't
have our
tell,
selection ready, so.
this is like the only book I've read recently. But the thing about this book is that obviously it's long, but like so many of these pages get you really close to the four main characters. especially Jude, who's the main character in this. And I think even though he's gone through way more traumatic things than I personally have, I just think he's such like a relatable character, like how like certain events like affect him and how like he's not perfect. And then the other characters, like they have so many flaws and it makes me think of myself too. And it's just nice to feel like represented and then have characters that you feel like they're your friends. And so when something
Yes.
sad happens, it breaks you.
Do you like hardcovers or paperbacks better? Do you have a preference?
I don't know. Most of my books are, I kind of like how paperbacks are like easier to hold. And
Yeah.
back on the price, this one was still $25 and it's paperback. But
Oh,
I like
wow.
how it's just kind of easier. Like people are gonna get mad at me for like bending it like this. I just feel like it's easier like holding it because like it's like you can see that it's like bending like this and then like
Yeah,
this I feel like I'm gonna break it just reading it and it's this is heavy like I could take someone out with this
I know.
but like this is like it doesn't bend and it's like constantly flopping and like I feel like I'm gonna break the spine but
I,
and this is falling off already the little
yeah, I can't stand the dust jackets.
yes
Like I have to take them off. But then I want that, like I want to throw them away or something, but they
yeah.
just have to like sit on my desk while
Yeah,
I'm
this is
reading.
pretty. And then you take the dust cover off and it's just black. So before we wrap up, are there specific literary characters that have left an impression on you or that you found relatable?
I have to again talk about my girl, Aylin, from Throne of Glass. Just her story is just it makes me cry. I love her. And she has just been through so much. I'm talking about her like I know her, but I feel like I do. Like you've just been through everything with the characters that you feel like you were there with them.
Hmm.
But I love her story. I don't want to like say anything about it because it's spoilers. This is the
Yeah.
last book. But I love her. I love a lot of Sarah J. Maas's characters, actually. I
Hmm.
like this girl Manon is also in this series, and she's a witch. And I don't know. I really, even if I don't like connect to their stories, they're so like fleshed out, and their stories always make me cry.
Yet again, these characters, when they live in New York and they're past college age, they're like, this is like from like childhood to like their 50s, 60s. Obviously, I can't relate to like past college, but like hearing about all these characters, their different personalities and how they act with like friends and family, it's just so like you get like they're so fleshed out. You're like, that's my friend, or like that's
I
he's
know.
literally me.
That is literally me, actually.
Thank you, Casey, for sharing your literary journey and insights with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here.
Thanks for having me. It's been so fun getting to talk about books with you.
Yes, even though I don't really read them, but that's okay.
You've read enough.
Yeah, exactly. So, to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this literary adventure. Stay tuned for more captivating conversations about different types of media on Media Morsels. Goodbye and happy reading.